Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg. This is Nonfiction November 2021, and I am here to review From a Taller Tower, The Rise of the American Mass Shooter by Seamus McGraw. This is a book about gun violence and is potentially very contentious. This book does not advocate taking away guns from gun owners. It is a look at the mass shooters of this country and how this country is more or less one of the only countries in the world that has this problem. New Zealand did have a mass shooter a while ago, and they immediately made laws to change the way people can use guns in that country so they would not experience a mass shooting again. This book makes it rather clear that those type of laws are not going to happen in the United States of America. And the book does go through quite a number of the mass shootings in this country. The author does not like to use the names of the mass killers. He thinks that gives them too much press coverage. And at one point, he felt that he had to use the name of the killer from the Texas towers he shot into the music festival. And he only used it once, and he seemed to regret it very strongly. Now, as I said, this is a historical look at these mass shootings. But there is also commentary, and I want to read one pieces of his commentary. There is no silence on earth deeper than the silence between gunshots. It's only human nature that we try to fill it, stuffing it with our suppositions and conjectures, half-truths and misconceptions. And that just goes to the fear that people who are caught in a mass shooting fear after they hear a gunshot, and they do not know when that next gunshot is coming. And that is a terrifying thing to read about. I have not experienced it myself, but it must be so frightening. And that what this author does very well is bring that to the foreground. Now, the author also does try to propose a semi-solution to gun violence in the United States of America. I was not entirely convinced by his beliefs. I guess it's not a spoiler to say that he thinks there should be more observation and notice when people make comments about violence, that people may be contemplating violence, that people speak out and say something. He is pretty much in favor of red flag laws. I know lots of gun owners are totally opposed to red flag laws, and I guess I can't understand it. I wish there were other books to read besides this one that had the opposite point of view. And like one of the points of view in this book is debunking the myth of the good guy with the gun. And that is spoken by the head of the NRA, says, the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is with a good guy with a gun. And he had some statistics. Out of all the mass killings involving guns, 11% of the killers were stopped by unarmed civilians. A little over 3% were stopped by armed civilians. There is also a bit of a quotation from police, including the Secret Service, who think that armed civilians would actually make a lot more trouble in these situations when there are armed killers. I'm going to leave it at that because, well, look who's walking behind me. It's Mr. Teddy. Say hello to book 2, Mr. Teddy. Get my head out of the way. Yeah, So that is my mini review. I do want to read one little piece, and this is more just personal opinion rather than book review. This is a poem by Stephen Crane. A man feared he might find an assassin, another that he might find a victim. One was more wise than the other. Now, the reason I read that is that a few days before I read this book, I was walking on a path in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And this is a very pleasant path to walk on. It's paved. There is mothers pushing prams. There's an old lady pushing an old dog, an old blind dog in a pram. And people jogging, and people walking, and there's absolutely nothing to fear on this path that I have seen. And then last week, I was coming back from my walk and walking to the parking lot, and there was a, let's just say, a white male, late 50s, early 60s, who was coming onto the path with an unconcealed pistol at his hip. What did this man fear? The Stephen Crane poem says, a man feared he might find an assassin. And by assassin, I'm assuming it's an older terminology that he just meant a murderer. And then another man feared that he might find a victim of a murderer. Now, which man is more wise? I have my opinions, but I don't know if my opinion is correct. The Stephen Crane poem does not say. It's open to interpretation. Did this man walking on a path in Fredericksburg, Virginia, have a legitimate fear enough to carry a pistol at his hip? I'll leave it at that. Have a good day, night, BookTube.